In this video we are going to take a closer look at 9th edition's beefed up bikes, the Outriders. First we will take a look at their datasheet and general abilities. Then we will go through how to specifically make use of them in a Deathwatch army by including them in a Fortis Kill Team. Lastly, there will be some modeling recommendations and a quick wrap up. This release is the second part of a mini-series on the Fortis Kill Team, which will cover all the units available to that kill team.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer, and I will be guiding you through this video.
Looking at their datasheet, their stats are very similar to their Firstborn Biker counterparts, but with an extra wound and an extra attack, which used to be the standard increase for primaries before 9th edition. At 50 points per model, their price tag is certainly a steep one, no small thanks to the 5 points price increase that dropped with the Space Marine January FAQ. While one can argue that several of the Indomitus models were, and some still are, undercosted, personally I think that the Outriders were unjustly hit by that FAQ. But moving on, in terms of offensive power, what they basically get over the Firstborn Bikers are the twin bolt rifles with that bigger range and extra AP, as well as the devastating charge ability. Each time this unit fights, if it made a charge move this turn, then until that fight is resolved, add 2 to the attack's characteristic of models in this unit. This combined with Angels of Death and the extra attack from the Astartes Chainsword already puts them at an impressive number of attacks before anything else is being applied. With the basics covered, how can we best use them in the Deathwatch? When running them as a regular Outrider squad, they have a fixed size of 3, including the Sergeant, and count as a fast attack choice. They have the Biker as well as the core keyword, so at least they get access to a huge range of buffs. While their loadout is generally fixed, we could for instance use the Sanction of the Black Vault Stratagem to give the Sergeant access to the Artificial Bolt Cache relic and with that a special issue ammunition. Because of their devastating charge special ability, the Outriders are far more potent in close combat though, and the twin bolt rifle is not enough to warrant the usage of that relic. In general, I would say that given their steep price tag, there is no real reason to bring an Outrider squad separately. However, the Deathwatch has of course access to the Fortis Kill Team, which is where the Outriders can still shine. By including them in a kill team, the Outriders gain OPSEC, the maximum number of models go up from 3 to 5, and we have the option to make them count as infantry instead of bikers by having them mixed with at least one infantry model. On top of that, they can also get access to specialisms. So what's up with the infantry bikes? Originally, when the 9th edition supplement came out, Outriders in the Fortis Kill Team received a lot of hype, mainly because back then they would keep the infantry keyword even when used as a combat squad of 5 Outriders, and some content creators went as far as suggesting running triple Fortis Kill Teams with Outriders. But then the FAQs hit and they fell a little out of fashion. While having 5 OPSEC Outriders as actual bikers is still an improvement over running them regularly, I highly recommend using them to their fullest potential, which means running 4 Outriders and the Intercessor Sergeant as their own combat squad. Because of how wound allocation works in 9th edition, you want to save the Sergeant for last, because once he is gone, the bikes lose the infantry keyword. Also, the bases of the Outriders are huge, so even with the Sergeant potentially slowing them down, you can still cover a lot of ground. Infantry bikes are the one way that Deathwatch can still bring a somewhat overpriced unit up to competitive levels. One final thing to note about the Outriders' interaction within a kill team is that while including a single one is enough to give the whole kill team access to the fallback and charge stratagem, the same does not apply to the the Outriders' abilities. In the Deathwatch supplement, listed under the Fortis Kill Team rules, you'll find the following 2 entries. The Devastating Charge ability only applies to Outriders in this unit. Outriders can only use the Turbo Boost ability if their unit only contains Outriders, such as after using the Combat Squad's ability, meaning that the Outriders themselves keep the extra attacks on the charge, the rest of the kill team does not. And as previously covered, the Intercessor Sergeant will potentially slow them down, though on maps with a decent amount of terrain, this will be easily compensated for by the Infantry keyword. For Stratagems, they are of course primaries and therefore gain access to the popular Transhuman as well as Genrod Might. Just like the veteran bikers, they get access to Skilled Riders, which is -1 to hit after advancing, as well as hit and run warfare for fallback and shoot, but only for as long as they are actual bikers. This is another slight disadvantage for running them as infantry bikes, but as far as I'm concerned, having this keyword is well worth losing the Stratagems. Furthermore, they have access to the Deathwatch specific Relentless Assault stratagem, which allows them to fall back and charge, as well as Teleportarium. Both of these can be used regardless of whether they count as bikers or infantry. All in all, I think that by including them in the Fortis Kill Team, the Deathwatch uniquely boosts the Outriders up to the level where they can easily remain competitive even at the increased cost. With that being said, let's have a look at some modeling recommendations. While the Outriders come with a fixed loadout, one question I commonly see is how to deal with the Deathwatch Shoulderpad. In a previous video about how to convert the Deathwatch Ravenwing Outriders, I have covered these steps in more detail. If you haven't seen that video yet, the link is in the description. Basically, the Outriders kit is always the same, regardless of whether you got them from the Indomitus box or separate. On the Sergeant and the second Outrider, the left shoulder pad is pretty simple to change. On the third Outrider, however, one piece of the arm is already attached to the torso and the shoulder pad is directly attached to the wrist. While this might look confusing at first, the replacement is actually the simplest. Just cut away the shoulder pad and then put a little green stuff inside of the replacement shoulder pad before gluing it to the model, and that's about it. What I also did was giving the Sergeant model a helmet. As the model already has a helmet clamped to the leg, I cut that helmet away and covered up the spot with a purity seal. Another easy solution would be to paint it as battle damage. To wrap things up, the Outriders might just be that one Indomitus unit that got hit a bit too hard by points changes. At 50 points per model, they get comparably few advantages over the Firstborn Bikers, the two main ones certainly being the crazy number of attacks on the charge, as well as access to Transhuman, which makes them quite durable. For the Deathwatch, while running them as an actual Outrider squad would give access to the Sergeant with his extra attack and the option to take the special issue ammunition relic, this is all fairly underwhelming when compared to the benefits of including them in the Fortis Kill Team instead. Up to 5 of them can be included. They gain OPSEC, access to specialisms, as well as the option to become infantry bikes by having at least one actual infantry model in the unit. Personally, I recommend taking the infantry approach, which means 4 Outriders plus the Intercessor Sergeant in a combat squad. Due to 9th edition's wound allocation, you want to save the Sergeant for as long as possible, because once he is gone, the bikes lose the infantry keyword again. The one downside of this is that they won't get access to the -1 to hit after advancing biker stratagem anymore, but counting as infantry makes more than up for this. Speaking of stratagems, they do of course get access to Transhuman, Genrod Might, Fallback and Charge, as well as the Teleportarium. While they come with a fixed loadout, swapping their default shoulder pad for the Deathwatch pauldron may appear a bit confusing. For more information on this, check out my guide linked in the description. All in all, I think that by including them in the Fortis Kill Team, the Deathwatch uniquely boosts the Outriders up to the level where they can easily remain competitive even at the increased cost. So that's it for the Outriders in the Deathwatch. Have you guys been using these yourself, or are you favoring other models instead? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.